Tim Walz continues to be criticized for embellishing his rank in service. After it came out over the weekend, he once claimed to be an official bikini inspector. Walz's direct superior in the National Guard says Walz knew his unit was about to deploy to Iraq and went behind the back of his superior officer to resist.
That this guy doesn't have the limp he pretended to have, doesn't have like a bent hand that he pretended to have, that he's perfectly fine. He struts off into the sunset, and we learn he was the bad guy all along. And I have to tell you, Mark, that is how I'm feeling today about Tim Walz.
What happens when you hand Tim Walz a microphone, toss in two hosts with zero tolerance for political theater, and hit record? You get a verbal smackdown so fierce, even the teleprompter begged for mercy. Greg Gutfeld delivers razor-sharp sarcasm, Megyn Kelly unleashes unapologetic heat, and Tim Walz. He mostly brings baffled expressions and awkward pauses. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when a governor walks into a rhetorical buzzsaw and doesn't even realize it, stay tuned. This roast sizzles hotter than Walz's poll numbers are frozen. Brace yourself, it's about to get gloriously uncomfortable.
Back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on...
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this.
Tim Walz, the man, the myth, the walking political piñata with all the resilience of a soggy napkin in a Minnesota blizzard. If incompetence needed a brand ambassador, he'd show up in a North Face jacket, gripping a clipboard like it's a lifeline, and mumbling through a press conference with the confidence of a dad trying to explain TikTok using dial-up. Minnesotans didn't elect a governor. They accidentally promoted the substitute gym teacher who mistakes bureaucratic jargon for leadership and brings all the charisma of cold, unsalted oatmeal. Bland, baffling, and somehow always a little offbeat.
For Tim Walz on the disastrous performance he delivered, in particular when it comes to his self-described knuckle-headed behavior. This one was that he was in China when the Tiananmen Square disaster unfolded, when hundreds of people were killed.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong in China in 1989. That move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me, about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris understands China.
The excuse for his lies, Michael, is, I speak like
And just when you thought the bar for leadership couldn't sink any lower, in drifts Tim Walz, like a fog machine set to meh. It's the kind of performance that makes you do a double take and wonder if mediocrity applied for office, and won. You know it's a special kind of failure when even Greg Gutfeld, yes, the guy who could meddle in sarcasm, can't figure out if Walz is a sitting governor or a department store mannequin that accidentally wandered into a press conference with talking points taped to its chest.
Getting sworn in. But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this. Time of the month. Oh, Teb, who do you think he's talking to? Like, what is the audience for that?
I don't even know who the audience is. I was confused when I saw the clip. Who the is he talking to? He's operating on some old program, but the big issue here is he's trying to criticize Trump. That was like supposed to be a jab at Trump being an old white guy or whatever. But it just comes back to the fact that Democrats don't understand economics. Because if you look at the moves that Trump is making right now, these are great economic recovery.
Megyn Kelly didn't even need to warm up. One glance at Tim Walz's highlight reel, and she knew this wasn't going to be a challenge. It was less a political takedown, more like target practice at a carnival where the prize keeps falling over on its own. Imagine shooting fish in a barrel. If the fish were already floating belly up, waving a white flag.
Distort the way a law is written
to try and make a point. That's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, getting engaged, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate.
From 2015 to 2023, which was the date Tim Walz repealed the law requiring life-saving care, 24 babies were born alive in Minnesota after an attempted abortion. Think of how horrific.
Let's kick things off with a true policy gem. Tim attempts to govern while staring blankly into the void. His approach to leadership reads like a one-star Yelp review. Too slow, too loud, and you instantly regret the experience. Every time he speaks, it's like your brain hits a mental loading screen. Spinning wheel, frozen frame, all of it. If leadership were Wi-Fi, Tim Walz is that one flickering bar you get in your basement, where you have to stand on a chair, arm outstretched, praying for a signal. But don't be fooled, he's not just consistently bad. No, he's versatile. Think of him as a Renaissance man of ruin. Education? Fumbled. Public safety? Apparently gives him hives. The economy? He treats it like a piñata, blindfolded, spinning in circles, swinging wildly, and hoping something useful falls out, while the candy goes straight into a wood chipper. And when crime took off like a SpaceX launch with Elon Musk narrating, Tim responded with the urgency of someone fine-tuning their mobile order for a soy latte. The solution? A listening session, because when the house is on fire, what better time to gather in a circle and brainstorm synonyms for emergency? Meanwhile, Minnesotans dialing 911 were treated to hold music that sounded suspiciously like a raccoon learning to use GarageBand.
The dumbest administration of all time. Why is he talking?
It really is the ultimate clown show. And I said this in the 5. He's a clown without a circus. He's
Doesn't
just
even need
roaming,
makeup.
He's roaming the terrain. Is there some carnival that I could work for?
Yeah.
I'll wash your windows.
He's a rogue clown.
Yes.
Who is just an inconsequential footnote to vice presidential history.
Yes.
No one will remember his name on trivia night, and that's going to be in 3 months.
Ah yes, the riots. Tim Walz's defining moment of leadership, or what can only be described as performance art gone terribly wrong. Picture a Shakespearean tragedy. It's Shakespeare had forgotten how to write, dropped acid, and cast sock puppets in all the lead roles. As buildings burned and chaos rolled through the streets, Walz stood at the podium delivering press conferences so comically vague, even a magic 8-ball would have shouted, "Come on, man, make a call." Greg Gutfeld took one look at the disaster and summed it up perfectly. This guy governs like a Stonewall cop who accidentally wandered into a riot and decided his best move was to nap behind the Orange Julius. And honestly, that would have been a step up. Tim Walz doesn't manage crises, he kind of just vibes with them. Imagine your state is a car flying off a cliff and Tim's in the passenger seat, nodding thoughtfully, suggesting maybe try rebooting the ignition. While everyone else is screaming, grab the wheel. But no, he's busy drafting a strongly worded email to himself. Because nothing says urgent leadership like bureaucratic journaling while the world outside is on fire.
My husband, he doesn't react to that much in the news. And so when it gets his attention, I know that something's gone either very right or very wrong. And he did not like this clip from Tim Walz reacting to the Taylor Swift news. Watch.
Taylor Swift signed childless cat lady. I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up.
And my husband said he looks like Elmer Fudd. That's what he looks like, Elmer Fudd. Like there's something off about this.
Megyn Kelly, who can weaponize smugness like it's a precision-guided missile, took one glance at Tim Walz's track record and instantly transformed into a verbal buzzsaw. She shredded his tenure with surgical precision, treating his political resume like a Pinterest craft project gone wildly off the rails. A sprinkle of glitter from his education plan here, some hot glue from his crumbling infrastructure ideas there, then she tossed it all into the roaring dumpster fire otherwise known as his public safety strategy. For a moment, you almost feel sorry for the guy. Almost. Then you remember, he ran for re-election, voluntarily. He looked at his own first term, the policy flops, the public outcry, the leadership by livestream, and gave himself a metaphorical gold star. Let's do that again. not confidence, not even optimism. That's pure delusion, served with a taxpayer-funded cup of Kool-Aid. Under Walz's reign, Minnesota turned into a real-life escape room, except nothing makes sense, the clues contradict each other, and the guy with the key is standing in the corner chanting, "Trust the process." What process, Tim? The one where common sense goes to die and accountability takes an indefinite, unpaid sabbatical.
Back in the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DNI.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this.
The state budget under Tim Walz, a fiscal comedy that practically writes itself. Give this man a surplus, and he'll spend it like a college freshman with their first credit card. No restraint, no plan, just pure vibes. But instead of late-night pizza and video games, he splurged on bloated committees, overpaid consultants, and whatever bureaucratic beanstalk he thinks sprouts new government programs. Greg Gutfeld nailed it when he said if Walz managed your household finances, you'd be living in a van behind a burned-down Arby's, budgeting for oxygen. Prioritization? Forget it. Give him a choice between curing cancer or buying a diamond-encrusted stapler for a task force on feelings, and guess where that money's going? It's performance spending with no encore. And then there's his COVID response, a masterclass in chaos. Picture this, lockdowns so strict even introverts were begging to go outside, businesses shuttered, schools scrambled, and somehow he acted surprised when the economy did a faceplant worthy of Olympic replay. It was like watching someone skim half a Wikipedia article on pandemics, panic halfway through, and decide the only things that should remain open were existential dread and spotty Wi-Fi.
In the ring. I speak of former VP nominee Tim Walz. He joined Beto O'Rourke at a Texas town hall last night, and the estrogen levels were enough to give Chuck Norris menstrual cramps. I wonder, is our strength our diversity?
Our strength is our diversity. We've been talking about this for years as a country of immigrants, and we let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DNI.
But I'm thinking there's only one explanation for Tim spewing nonsense like this.
While small businesses were on life support, practically begging for a lifeline, Tim Walz was busy issuing guidelines thick enough to double as doorstops, equal parts bureaucracy and biblical wrath. Restaurants were drowning in updates, getting more notifications than an iPhone stuck in beta mode. One day you could open, the next you needed to stand on one leg, sanitize your eyebrows, and recite the governor's name backwards under a full moon just to serve fries. But here's the real kicker. While Minnesotans maced up, locked down, and followed the ever-mutating rulebook, guess who occasionally forgot to follow his own mandates? That's right, Walz himself. The "all rules for thee, not for me" routine played out like a political greatest hit. At this point, hypocrisy under his watch has been so consistent, it deserves its own cabinet position. Secretary of Oops, I Did It Again.
Have a Jewish man as her running mate. Bad enough she's married to a Jewish man. This is how I'm sure they're thinking. I mean, Walz, on the other hand, is from a state that just changed his flag to represent that of Somalia. So it's a win. Ms. Harris reportedly calling Governor Walz earlier today to inform him of her, I'm putting her in quotes, first big decision. Who the hell knows who made this choice for her? He's the favorite of Nancy Pelosi. He was the favorite of Bernie Sanders. Does that tell us anything?
Megyn Kelly had an absolute field day with this one, transforming into the human embodiment of a courtroom cross-examination. Her delivery was so precise, her side eyes so razor-sharp, you could practically Juliana Carrot with them. So lockdowns were essential, she said, but you took a little trip to Dakota. Fascinating. Want a shovel to dig that hole deeper, or are you planning to freestyle your way to the center of the earth? Even the National Guard wasn't spared from Walz's personal circus of hesitation and half measures. He activated them late, fumbled the timing, then stood at the podium congratulating himself like a guy who burns toast, scrapes off the char, and proudly serves it as artisanal brunch. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld is off in the corner doing what amounts to a political stand-up roast, lampooning the chaos with surgical glee. Walz may call it leadership, but the rest of us see it for what it is: wishful thinking, duct taped together with indecision and wrapped in a thick layer of performative cowardice.
That Walz lost, but one of them, Politico says, is like Walz's wide eyes showed his passion and emotional intensity. Can we show that? There is his wide eyes. That humans would widen their eyes to convey that danger is close. What emotion are you getting from that?
Sorry. Still. That was every.
There's a rare kind of political talent required to alienate both progressives and conservatives simultaneously. But Tim Walz, he's made it an art form. One minute he's pledging bold progressive reform. The next, he's flinging bureaucratic spaghetti at the wall like a chef on a deadline, hoping something, anything, sticks. Spoiler, nothing did. But now the wall's a mess, and nobody knows who's cleaning it up. Take education, for example. Under Walz, Minnesota's schools began to resemble a choose-your-own-adventure novel, except every option leads to a dead end, and it's written entirely in passive voice. Test scores plummeted, teacher shortages ballooned, and what did Walz deliver in response? A task force. Naturally. Because nothing screams urgent reform like a parade of consultants, a 62-slide PowerPoint, and a brainstorming session on feelings. Megyn Kelly put it best. Watching Walz talk about education is like watching a magician pull policy ideas out of a hat, except the hat's on fire and the rabbit's suing for emotional trauma. He loves to talk equity and access, but when the school bell rings, students still can't read at grade level and teachers are fleeing faster than cats at a dog park. It's not reform, it's reruns, and the ratings are tanking.
I have a fourth grader, rising fifth. And if there were ever a tampon dispenser machine in his bathroom, I would personally go and rip it down, like we saw those kids do in Virginia last year. And what will likely be a massive issue for Governor Walz, which is not being covered by the mainstream today, he is being accused of misleading voters on his military service and dodging combat service
And let's not even open the pothole-ridden can of worms that is Minnesota's transportation system. Roads? Crumbling. Public transit? Running on hope and duct tape. Walz's grand plan appears to be a blend of selective blindness and wishful thinking. Just ignore it and trust the snowplows to manifest infrastructure miracles. Meanwhile, drivers are out there playing real-life Mario Kart, swerving around potholes so massive they qualify for their own ZIP codes. Of course, he tried to slap a fresh coat of green on the whole mess, promising climate-forward transportation investments. But every electric bus proposal wilted faster than a houseplant in the fluorescent nightmare of his office. Still, he makes time for the press if you're into interpretive dithering and bureaucratic performance art. Every time he steps up to the mic, it's like a TDD talk delivered by someone who forgot their topic mid-sentence and pivoted to describing their lunch in dramatic detail. He'll use 30 words when 3 would do, and by the end, you're left wondering whether you just attended a policy briefing or accidentally crewed up a meditative audiobook on abstract confusion.
Not reporting Walz's loss, but mourning it. Now, the truth is that a VP debate is like a colonoscopy. It's important and necessary, but that doesn't mean you want to watch it.
Hong Kong and China during the democracy protest went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Even a deer in the headlights is screaming, "Get the out of the way, Jim!"
Greg Gutfeld laughed so hard he probably triggered a medical alert. Tim Walz is that special brand of leader who somehow makes people nostalgic for dial-up internet. And not just because of the lag, at least that made slow, steady progress. Walz clings to Minnesota's One Minnesota slogan like a man gripping a leaky pool noodle in a hurricane. It sounds unifying, sure, until you realize it's just glossy branding duct taped over a state fractured by rising crime, flawed policies, and a growing chorus of residents quietly Googling how to move to Wisconsin without looking desperate. Even Megyn Kelly couldn't muster a straight face. She quipped that the only One Minnesota she sees is the collective eye roll when Walz strolls up to a podium. Honestly, even his eyebrows seem desperate to flee the scene. He governs like someone who accidentally wandered into a leadership seminar, got mistaken for the keynote speaker, and thought, might as well roll with it. The man's superpower, surviving scandals with an awkward grin and the handoff reflex of an Olympic relay runner, passing blame with finesse. Yet, against all odds, he keeps getting invited back, like a cooking show contestant who burns the chicken, drops the sides, and still wins because the judges can't bring themselves to say, "This was a disaster." His intentions, always well-seasoned. The outcome, a buffet of blunders with a garnish of apathy, served cold to a state already running a fever.
Man with a beard, just a guy with a beard, or that expression, believe me, the pepper spray would be all sprayed all over Walz. That is the freak, not JD Vance.
Yeah, well, Walz's expression throughout the entire time did not convey steadiness. No. Like, almost like unsteady, weird.
At this point, Tim Walz isn't so much a governor as he is a metaphor in motion, a living, breathing symbol of everything broken in modern politics. He's the human equivalent of a PowerPoint presentation, bland, overly cautious, allergic to accountability, and obsessed with optics over outcomes. His leadership philosophy: try to please everyone, end up doing nothing well, if anything at all. Minnesota, under his watch, feels like it's stuck in a loop. A never-ending reality show titled How Bad Can It Get? While Walz stands center stage, gently fiddling on his taxpayer-funded violin. The policies coming out of his office sound less like strategy and more like they were brainstormed by a focus group of over-caffeinated squirrels mid-identity crisis. Meanwhile, Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly are practically front-row commentators to the collapse, snacks in hand, watching the slow-motion implosion of the House of Walz as if it's the final season of a soap opera that forgot how to write plot twists. Because Minnesota didn't elect a leader, they inherited a bureaucratic cautionary tale with sideburns. And now the rest of us just watch, wince, and pray someone yanks the plug before this malfunctioning political Roomba announces a presidential run.